I came home for Christmas because some part of me still believed that time could fix people. That if I showed up enough, smiled enough, stayed quiet enough, I might finally be treated like I belonged. I packed the car carefully, folding my son's clothes the way he liked, double-checking that his favorite scarf was tucked into the side pocket. He was 6 years old enough to remember moments, old enough for them to shape him. The drive felt longer than usual. Snow lined the roads, and my son hummed softly in the back seat, kicking his feet in excitement. "Grandma's house smells like cookies," he said. I smiled, even though my stomach tightened. I wanted this visit to be different. I needed it to be different. When we walked through the front door, warmth rushed toward us, heat, laughter, noise. The living room looked perfect. Too perfect. The Christmas tree stood tall and glowing, branches sagging under the weight of ornaments and lights. Beneath it were piles of gifts, stacked high and wide, wrapping paper shining like candy. My sister's kids were already tearing into presents, their laughter sharp and loud. Boxes flew open. Wrapping paper ripped. Someone screamed with joy over a new tablet. Another squealed over a bike helmet. I stood there holding my son's hand, watching. I didn't mean to count the presents. I really didn't. But my eyes did it anyway. 1, 2, 10, 20, 36. 36 gifts for my sister's children. My son's grip on my hand loosened as he leaned forward slightly, scanning the floor under the tree. His eyes moved slowly, carefully, like he was afraid to miss something. I waited for my mom to say something, to laugh, to clap her hands, to say, "Oh, we saved yours for last." But she didn't. Minutes passed. I helped in the kitchen. I made polite conversation. I refilled drinks. All the while, my son sat quietly on the couch, hands folded in his lap, watching his cousins open gift after gift. Finally, I leaned toward my mother and spoke softly, not wanting to embarrass her. "Mom, did you forget Liam's gift?" She turned to me with a puzzled expression, like I had asked something unreasonable. "Oh," she said after a pause. "I must have forgotten. You know how busy I've been." Forgotten. The word landed heavy and sharp. She didn't apologize. She didn't rush to fix it. She just shrugged and turned back to the room. I looked at my son. He had heard everything. He smiled, small, polite, brave. The kind of smile children learn when they don't want to cause trouble. Something inside me cracked open. Not loudly. Quietly. Like ice giving way. This wasn't about a present. It never was. It was about patterns, years of being overlooked, minimized, expected to understand while everyone else was celebrated. It was about how easily my child had inherited my place in the family without ever doing a single thing wrong. I realized then that Christmas didn't reveal new wounds. It simply showed me the ones I had been pretending didn't exist. I didn't confront anyone. Not my mother, not my sister, not the room full of people who had noticed everything and chosen to say nothing. I had learned long ago that explanations were wasted on people who benefited from not understanding. Instead, I watched my son from across the room. He sat with his back straight, legs swinging slightly above the floor, still smiling when someone looked his way. That smile hurt more than anger ever could. I walked over to him and knelt down, bringing myself to his level. "Hey," I said gently. "You ready to head home?" He glanced once more at the tree, at the chaos of wrapping paper and noise, then nodded. "Okay, Mom. No questions. No complaints. Just acceptance." I helped him into his coat, taking my time as I zipped his jacket. The sound of the zipper felt loud in the quiet space inside my chest. I tucked his scarf neatly around his neck, brushing snow from his hair even though we hadn't stepped outside yet. My hands moved automatically, steady and careful, the way they always did when I was protecting him from something he shouldn't have to carry. No one stopped us. My mother didn't look up. My sister laughed at something on her phone. The room was too busy celebrating to notice the people leaving without being celebrated. The front door closed behind us with a soft click. Not a slam. Not a statement. Just a sound that marked an ending. Outside, the cold hit us instantly. Snowflakes drifted down slowly, almost peacefully, like they didn't know what had just happened. I buckled my son into his seat, brushing my thumb across his cheek. He was quiet the entire time. As I started the car, he stared out the window, watching the lights fade as we pulled away. A few blocks passed before he spoke. "Mom?" he asked quietly. "Yes, sweetheart? Did Grandma forget me, or did I do something bad?" The question stole the air from my lungs. I pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face him. "No," I said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Ever." He nodded slowly, like he was trying to store the answer somewhere safe. "Okay." The rest of the drive was silent, but my mind wasn't. Memories rushed in, birthdays where my cake came late, school events where my seat stayed empty, achievements brushed aside because someone else needed more attention. I had told myself it didn't matter. That I was strong. That I could handle it. But my son shouldn't have to. That night, after I tucked him into bed and listened to his breathing settle into sleep, I sat alone in the dark. The house was quiet, but for the first time, the silence felt honest. I opened my laptop. There was the trust. The one I had contributed to quietly, responsibly, without applause. The one they spoke about like it was guaranteed, untouchable, permanent. They had forgotten something else. I wasn't powerless anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I simply removed their names. And when I closed the laptop, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Morning came too quickly, but I was already awake. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to my son's quiet footsteps as he moved around his room. The world hadn't ended. The house still stood. The sun still rose. And yet, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in my life, I had chosen action over endurance. I made breakfast slowly, the ordinary sounds grounding me, the clink of a spoon against a bowl, the soft hum of the kettle. My phone lay face up on the counter. I knew it would ring. I had lived long enough in my family to understand their patterns. Silence from me always made them uneasy. Right on schedule, the screen lit up. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello?" "Hey," he said, his voice casual, almost cheerful. "We're in a bit of a situation. Your mom mentioned you might help us out." I leaned against the counter, watching steam rise from my mug. "Help how?" "We just need 3,000, he said quickly, like he was asking to borrow sugar. "Short term. You know we'll pay you back." I almost smiled. The confidence. The assumption. The certainty that I would fold the way I always had. "No," I said. The word hung between us, heavy and unfamiliar. "What do you mean, no?" he asked, irritation creeping in. "It's Christmas. Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," I replied calmly. "I'm being done." He laughed sharply. "This is about yesterday, isn't it? You're really holding a grudge over a toy?" I closed my eyes and saw my son's face. His polite smile. His quiet question in the car. "It wasn't a toy," I said. "It was a message." Dad sighed, the sound thick with impatience. "You're overthinking it. Family doesn't keep score." "No," I said softly. "Family doesn't forget children." He went quiet. "I've spent years making excuses for all of you," I continued. "Years paying, fixing, smoothing things over. I won't do it anymore." "This isn't like you," he snapped. "I know," I said. "That's why it matters." I ended the call before he could respond. Within minutes, my phone started vibrating again. My mother this time. Then again. And again. Calls stacked up like evidence. Texts followed. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. You're being cruel. Cruel. I stared at the word, wondering how easy it was for them to use it now, when cruelty had been invisible to them for years. By afternoon, my phone showed dozens of missed calls. By evening, there were more than I could count. 77 by nightfall. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat on the floor with my son, building a lopsided tower out of blocks. He laughed when it fell, unafraid, unburdened. They were panicking because something had finally cost them. I was calm because I had already paid far too much. And for the first time, the balance felt right. That night, after the house finally settled into quiet, I tucked my son into bed and sat beside him longer than usual. His breathing evened out, slow and steady, the way it does when a child feels safe. I brushed my fingers through his hair and realized something important. This was what peace looked like. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady and warm. I left his door slightly open and walked into the living room. My phone was still face down on the table. I didn't need to look at it to know what was there. Missed calls. Messages. Voicemails that swung wildly between anger, confusion, and desperation. For years, those sounds would have sent me spiraling, apologizing for things I didn't do, fixing messes I didn't make. That night, I felt none of that. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching snow drift under the streetlight. Each flake fell quietly, independently, and disappeared without asking permission. I thought about how often I had mistaken endurance for love. How I had believed being needed meant being valued. How I had taught myself to stay small so others could stay comfortable. The silence felt different now. It wasn't punishment. It was protection. The next morning, I finally listened to one voicemail. My mother's voice was tight, strained. I don't understand why you're doing this, she said. We're family. We gave you everything. Everything, except fairness. Everything, except care for my child. I deleted the message without replying. Over the next few days, I heard from relatives who had never called me before unless something was wrong. They asked what happened. They told me I was being harsh. They reminded me of obligations I had outgrown. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I had learned that people who benefit from your silence rarely deserve your explanation. Instead, I focused on building something new. I donated toys in my son's name. We baked cookies together. We created our own Christmas, one without comparisons or quiet disappointments. My son laughed freely, without checking anyone's face first. Watching him, I knew I had made the right choice. Weeks later, the calls stopped. Not because they understood, but because they realized I wouldn't bend. And that was the moment I truly felt free. My revenge was never about money. It was never about watching them panic or scramble or feel the absence of what I once provided so willingly. My revenge was choosing a life where my child would never have to ask if he mattered. It was walking away without slamming doors, without speeches, without cruelty. Just clarity. I didn't take anything from them. I simply stopped giving. And in that quiet decision, I finally gave myself, and my son, the future we deserved.